Bait traps. While I primarily use cast bait when fishing inshore for striped bass, red grouper, spotted grouper, blue grouper, and other species, I have had particularly good success using live bait under corks to catch red grouper and grouper. So, in the decade since I moved from the mountains to coastal Virginia, I have set up a bait trap from spring to late fall. Sometimes 2 or 3. Bait catching. I started by setting up an eel trap to catch eels. The eel trap is nylon-lined and rectangular, measuring 24 by 10 by 10, with a single round entrance at the top without a lid. I started catching baitfish with a standard wire funnel trap, the kind sold as bait traps that have small conical entrances at both ends and have 2 halves that fit together. These baitfish catch baitfish, killifish or mummershogs, quite well, baited or unbaited. Larger fish, including the largest ditchfish, don't get into these small traps much. I used about 3 a year due to rust, and eventually stopped using them. But I have a friend who is very good at catching baitfish with baitfish traps by leaving them overnight in a small culvert near an accessible path. There are many different types of baitfish traps, including some for shrimp and some specific baitfish. Buying a trap online can be effective if you have a clear idea of what you want, but I prefer to buy a trap that I can look through and see the quality, paying particular attention to whether it is nylon coated, which type is more durable, and how to remove the bait once caught. For example, some eel traps have a small hole at the top, which is not as easy to empty as the front-loaded type. Safety first. Always wear protective gloves when handling traps. Gloves protect you from cuts from sharp metal edges, as well as any contaminated material that may be stuck to the trap. Know how to handle trapped animals before you set the trap. People often catch animals without a plan for how to handle them. This is especially true for people who accidentally catch a skunk. Know your target species. The target species determines the size and type of trap needed. A word of caution: check your state's regulations when it comes to bait collection and use, and what species you may catch that must be released due to size or other reasons. And make sure you have a fishing license. What to bait? Sometimes the traps will catch baitfish without bait. Sometimes they will not catch anything for a while unless baited. For higher production, whole fish or dead fish are good for baiting the traps. Menhaden and small bluefish are especially good when whole. Bluefish and salmon carcasses are good, but other fish are certainly acceptable. In a pinch, or without carcasses or natural bait to use, I can put a can of cat food in the trap. The remains of cooked crabs and other shellfish also work well for catching baitfish. Location and purchase. I use the traps on my dock, where there is good current. Eel traps are placed under the dock, preferably next to a stake. Square baitfish traps are placed out and a few feet from the dock, with one side facing the current, not tilted toward it. I don't need to set the traps elsewhere. Although rust is not a problem in freshwater. The eel trap occasionally caught eels, but also caught anchovies, so I switched to that for smaller baitfish. Later, I also deployed the square baitfish trap, a 24 by 24 by 12 profile-coated nylon with 4 rectangular side entrances. This trap caught larger ditchfish, specks, pinfish, dolphin, silver perch, a variety of baitfish, and eels. Eels can escape, so when I pick up the trap with eels, I remove it immediately. The square baitfish trap also catches crabs. Since I have large crab traps set aside, which do not catch bait due to the size of the coated nylon mesh, I do not use the square bait traps for crabbing. When baited, the square traps will attract plenty of crabs as well as baitfish, but when unbaited, I usually avoid the crabs and just catch the baitfish. I use both the eel traps and the square bait traps, and will bait or unbait depending on the number and type of baitfish I have or expect to need. As a general rule, use the smallest trap necessary to catch the target species. Smaller traps help you avoid catching non-target species because their smaller size makes it difficult for larger animals to get in. Choose a good location. Place the trap so that the target animal can easily reach it. Place the trap at least 12 inches away from sensitive items to avoid trapping animals and damaging personal property. Figure 4. Set the trap so it doesn't wobble. Although the ground may appear flat, there are often bumps and dips that can cause the trap to wobble when an animal steps on the trap floor. A wobble trap is a hollow trap. To ensure that the trap is properly stabilized, scrape the ground to level it. Press down on different areas of the trap to see if it tips over. Step 6. Select the correct set and monitor the trap daily. Sets will be discussed later in this module. Traps should be checked daily regardless of weather or holidays. If you can't check the traps daily, close the traps or lock the doors so they can't close. If possible, check the traps in the morning and evening so that the animal spends less time in the trap. Step 7. Use multiple traps. Setting one trap can be effective. However, this is like hunting with a bullet. We recommend setting 3 traps when trying to catch squirrel-sized and larger animals. More used when trying to catch smaller animals. Trapping set. A set includes the use of the trap and its entire placement. Sets are classified as baited, blind, and active. Baited sets are the most common type and rely on bait or lures to attract animals into the trap. Using bait has the ability to selectively attract target species. Trappers often take advantage of the animal's sense of smell. Baiting the trap gives the scent of food or bait a chance to spread into the air. One method uses a forked stick. Use the stem to scoop some bait out of the container. Insert the stem into the back half of the bait area of the cage trap, so that the forks grip the trap mesh and let the stem dangle. Make sure the stick will not move much in the wind. If this is not taken into account, animals may grab the bait without getting close enough to press the pedal. This method gives the bait a lot of exposure to the air, while keeping it off the ground and away from ants. An alternative bait rod consists of a T-shaped plastic, PVC, pipe with a hole. The location of the first hole determines how much liquid bait is held. Push the top cap in without using glue so that the liquid bait slowly seeps out, saturating the area with attractant. Another way to bait a cage trap is to use trapper wire and cotton balls. This technique works well for liquid baits and lures because the cotton absorbs the liquid. Skewer 6 cotton balls with wire and bend the wire so they don't slip out. Make a loop at the other end to hang the wire from the cage. Hang the wire bait toward the back half of the bait area. As with any hanging method, make sure the wire won't move much in the wind. Otherwise, animals may grab the bait without getting close enough to press the pedal. In cases where hanging bait is not possible or practical, use a visual lure. One WCO uses a Chef Boyardee microwave lunch bucket to trap raccoons. Small white plastic bowls with lids that have holes in them. Bait is placed in the bowl and the lid is closed. The white bowl attracts raccoons, the holes allow the scent to disperse into the air, and the lid protects the bait from rain. Yogurt containers with holes cut in the lid also work. Make sure the bait container has enough weight to prevent it from blowing away in the wind. Add small rocks to the container to keep it in place. Visual attractants are especially important for skunks or raccoons. Place marshmallows in the back of the trap to attract them in the dark. Trapping. Module 8. Trapping. Trapping involves the use of mechanical devices to capture animals without the presence of a trapper. Trapping is one of the most common and effective methods used by landowners to manage wildlife damage because trapping saves time. Trapping works even when you are not present. Objectives. List the different types of cage and box traps. Identify the parts of a cage and box trap. Describe the different types of animal capture kits. Explain the principles and techniques used to reduce the capture of non-target animals. Definitions. In Module 5, Methods of Wildlife Control, we reviewed the methods available for wildlife control. In this module, we will focus on the use of cage and box traps to manage conflict-causing wildlife. Many people use the term live trap to identify traps that capture animals by confining them in a box. We find the term live trap misleading and inaccurate because some traps that hold animal body parts, e.g., foot grips or cable ties, also capture animals while they are still alive. Instead, we prefer to use the terms cage trap and box trap to identify devices that capture animals by confining them. Cage traps have walls made of wire mesh. Box traps have solid walls, usually made of wood. Plastic, or sheet metal. Figure 1. Types of cage and box traps. Manufacturers produce cage traps, Figure 2, and box traps with different features. This section will discuss some of the more important types of traps. Gravity doors versus spring doors. Gravity doors, as the name suggests, mean that when the trap is opened, the door falls due to gravity. Spring doors close with the help of a spring. Spring doors require the trapper to manually depress the spring to open the door. Each type of door has its pros and cons. Gravity door traps are generally cheaper and do not have springs that can wear out. Non-target animals can be easily released by gently rolling the trap to the top. The downside is that animals sometimes roll the trap and escape when the door is open. Spring doors allow for fewer escapes because the door cannot be opened if the trap is rolled, and the door will close even if the trap is not on flat ground. Single door or double door traps. Single door traps are the most common type of cage and box trap. The bait is placed at one end and the animal must enter the other end to get the bait. Double door traps have openings at both ends, giving the animal a tunnel-like appearance. Homeowner versus professional traps. Manufacturers produce cage traps for homeowners, retail level, as well as professionals such as wildlife control operators, WCOS. Although traps may appear similar, they can be quite different upon closer inspection. Generally, retail-grade traps have thinner metal and wider meshes, i.e., 1 by 1 inch, figure 3. They may not have protective handles. Professional traps are typically made with 1 by 1/2 inch mesh for the